Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the news behind the news with Raf Kantav on Mix 94.7 FM. I hope that you guys had a blessed day so far. This afternoon, I'm glad to have with me again Dr. Rhoda Arrindell, author, linguist, and a whole lot of other stuff. Activist. Definitely have to add that one in. So how are you doing, and thanks for coming back to the show.
Oh, good afternoon. I am doing great, and I'm glad again for this opportunity because we had some unfinished business the last time you said.
Yes, definitely. And I like to get things done and do it the right way.
All right, thanks. So this is what I call it, part two?
Yes, part two indeed.
Oh, wow.
So, the first time we spoke was mainly about language instruction, language of instruction, and got quite a bit of great feedback where that's concerned, especially I was telling you off air from students abroad, those who got to see it on YouTube.
Okay.
But one of the things that I often bring up here on the show is education, particularly as it relates to development of our youth, our people, because the outlook, that I see is that we are, in a sense, raising our kids to simply serve the present economy. But I mean serve and not even lead. So it's not like you're being encouraged to become a manager. Let's say, I think a good example is we usually tell our kids, to become lawyers, doctors, or engineers. So if we just deal with healthcare, you see a great push to get our students, and mostly young females, to be nurses. But in healthcare, you also have administrators, you have managers, you have financial positions and so forth. So it's like we're being driven to serve the base, which is based on, the service part, but not necessarily the head, where you make the decisions and guide people to, whatever direction or objective. So I say that to say that as a premise of, the conversation I want to have, as far as, maybe broad, but, approaching education in a way of really developing people to be leaders, to be decision makers in their nation. And it doesn't mean that everyone has to be prime minister, but even in your household, that, as you grow through our education system, you can lead yourself, you can lead your family, your community, and all of that. So, so my first question for you, based on having said all of that, is, because this is something I'm unfamiliar with. I was thinking, education in a sense, while it starts at home, we have daycares and preschools. Do these institutions, let's say, do they have to prescribe to a set curriculum, or is it that, you just set up your foundation or your business and, you kind of, is there a national guide towards the way we teach babies or infants from young? Or is there, or should there be, should it be in place as well? Because I'm not saying that it needs to, but I'm not sure.
This is going to be a long one. You permit me to go to the long route to this answer? Okay, let's back up to those of us who are engaged in education, what we say we think we're doing. Because you got to look at what's your purpose, right? If I'm going to engage in this thing called educating, what's the purpose? So I'm going to get to the purpose. But before going to the purpose, because you mentioned a whole lot when you talk about how we encourage our children to study. And I'm going to go back to how do we get to what we call education on St. Martin in the first place, right? Our education system that we currently have, both sides of the island, was not created for us. Was not created for us based on who we are as a people and where we want to go as a nation. Our system that we have inherited was based on European models and European ideals to serve European people in their colonies, right? That's the reality. You can't disconnect what's happening now from what happened and how we got here. And you need to acknowledge that. Once you understand that, now you understand how you go about changing it if you want to change, if you want changes. As long as we continue to have a system that promotes, first of all, elitist type of education. And you mentioned some key professions there, doctors, lawyers, engineers, right? If you have a system that is only promoting it. And why do I say promote a certain type of education? You have a system where at the age of 12, but just when a child is becoming into who he or she is, you give this exam, entrance exam for secondary school, the whole FBE conversation. And then from that exam, this is where the whole child's future is going to be connected to an exam, which is the stupidest thing when you think of it. But what we do, we give you the exam and we say, this exam is going to determine your level of smartness, your intelligence, but it's also going to stream you in a certain direction, right? So we have some numbers, some of it very arbitrary, and we say based on these numbers, this child should go in this conversation, in this direction. And so we've had conversations over the years. She's good with her hands, not with her head, and she better with, So that's already, to me, that's where part of the problem is. So when you start off like that, you've already, number one, put in the head of the children and their parents and the wider society that certain types of education have more value than others. You've already set that trend. Some parents, when they hear their children go to a particular school, the world is falling apart, their children too good to go to that school, so they ship them abroad. Because they find a system somewhere else that's going to cater to their child. The rest of us who can't ship our children abroad, we have to make do, as the old people say. So if your child get to a certain stream, half or maybe or whatever, we good. Child smart. If your child doesn't, so in the same thing in the north, right, with the different streams of when you're getting into the back and you talk about, I can't remember the exact names, but you have the different streams again.
I don't,
Yeah, okay. It's the same, this is a European notion that you got to stream people. You have to tell them what's better for them because everybody's smart alike. Basically, that's the elitist models of education. So once you do that, and and the funny thing with it, because I'm going to answer your question, I promise I'm going to get to your answer, right? But once you do that, you are telling the society that this value is on this. You're also telling the same society that these people should be okay with this, right? Because you talk about the nurses, and I'm going to get back to the nursing conversation. So the child who goes to a Sunday school, for example, right? She feels that the most she can do is be a nurse. If she ever gets to there, because you have this whole thing about SPWay and all of that nonsense where you find a route to somewhere of care. But you hear these children get excited because they feel somebody's already told them this is the most you can become. And so now they and their parents are very happy. She's going to be level 3. And, my child going to have a level 3. She's going to be good and she's going to be... And nothing wrong with it if that's what a child wants.
Yes,
I have no problem with it if the child says, my passion, my feelings is for this. I want to do this. I have a student who, they call her very bright, and she went to Harvard. She wants to do culinary arts. Oh, you're too smart to do culinary arts. What is that? The child is doing fine where she is as a chef. That's what she wants to do, right? Same thing with my son. He shouldn't do. Why you putting him in this? Child picks what he wants. But the system is going to decide where you go. I disagree with that kind of education system. I am saying every child, once it arrives here on planet Earth, has the same potential, right? And the potential to be its biggest and its best. And what we need to do is create a system that permits that child to become its biggest and its best. I am saying the system that we have on both sides of the island does not permit the child to become its biggest and its best. And I'm saying it doesn't say it for all. I'm saying every child should have the same access. Right? So now let's go back to this conversation about the nurse versus the thing. As long as you maintain a system of education where, first of all, let's talk about language of instruction, because this is where this comes in. Where the language of instruction is not your people's language, your children's language. You're not going to get your biggest and your best. You're going to get, first of all, a small handful that might be able to survive in spite of in the system. And from that group, you're not even going to get your biggest and your best, because the whole educational process, which is a journey into self-expression and self-growth and expansion, that child is going to be limited to what the language will permit him to do. this foreign language. So yes, I can answer your question. I can say, yeah, Manir, nay, Manir. But I can't have a full conversation with you about how I really feel about that conversation where you just brought up, right? So you're not getting the best out of your child. Now I'm going to come back to our system. We could do what we want until we change the system. We're not going to get the lawyers, the judges, the prosecutors, the doctors at the same numbers. We're going to get the one or two in spite of, but we're not going to get the plethora and the range of students that are going to come. The pharmacists are not going to be your children because they're not given the permission. Pharmacy, pharmacology, whatever the thing is they call it, it's a universal thing.
Yep.
If he were to go to school in his language and it wasn't pegged to a European system, that child, flying colors. I can guarantee you change our system, you're going to have the best of everything in St. Martin just by one. There are many things you're going to change. Now, trust me, there are a lot of things to change. But when you start making changes like language of instruction, where your child can feel big in the space, you're going to have all kinds of profession. And if you don't peg it, so you can't be a doctor if you... Here's the stupidity of our system that we're using now. And, when you talk to the professional, they say, well, it's the law. If you want, you should change the law. Parliamentarians, here's your job. If a doctor, I can't send my child can't study medicine in certain places and come back and work here.
Yeah.
The craziest thing. But he could go and leave St. Martin to go see that doctor in another country. But that doctor... or if my child went and studied there, can't practice here. Again, the little boys club, and I say boys, I don't mean men alone in this thing. It's a little elite club that is closed off because the people regulating it are the same people working in it and do not permit others to work in it. As long as you maintain that system, you are not going to get your biggest and your brightest. That girl who wants to be a doctor, who will end up studying nursing, like a NIPA there, and she could do a level 1, and then she could do a level 2, and she could eventually climb the ladder if she's lucky enough to go. But why can't she just leave school here and go study medicine?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
At least with that, I guess the good thing is that this year the proposal will be introduced to amend I guess they call it the big registration, which only allows for specifically
that's one
Dutch
area.
doctors. Yeah, that's one area. But I'm just saying,
yes,
this
year they're going to adjust, they're going to amend and whatever. I'm saying change the system.
Yeah.
Permit the child to study in St. Martin, if he or she wants to, go wherever in the world he or she wants to, and become a doctor to work anywhere in the world if he or she wants to.
Correct.
That's number one. But let's get back to justice, because that's the one that's where I think, listen, when you want to control a people, you control their finance and their justice and their education anywhere in the world. Who's in charge of that here in St. Martin? You see? And that's the conversation. If you want your people to be in charge, you got to change finance, justice, education. Who's in control of that? So if your laws and your financing laws, etc., are all in Dutch, and then it could be this system, how are you going to get your best banker? How are you going to get that boss that you were just asking about at the thing? When you're telling this child, you could study. When my students come to me and they say they want to study business administration, I say, good. Is that what you want? I don't know. But whose business you want to administer? Why are you studying business administration? Nothing wrong with it. But whose business are you planning to administer? Am I teaching you that, or am I trying to teach you to become entrepreneur like your grandfather who didn't have no degrees? See? So the question for me is, what's our objective with education? And that's why I said the book we talked about the last time. And how are we going to get there? I am saying get there by changing the system. You got to change the system. I didn't say go take the back pan and turn it upside down. No.
Correct.
I say we need to change the system. We need to know. And this is why independence is so important, connected to this conversation. Because when you saying this is my destination, so I'm going from a position of independence, you're saying in order for me to get there, these are some of the things I need to change now.
Correct.
And for me to change them now, I need to see how I'm going to transition between what I have now and where I am going. Right? And that's your banking system, but your judiciary. To me, the biggest part is justice. It hurts me. We talked about that the last time, how people in the system have to sit down and wait for interpreters to fix their thing. But when I look at the average so-called lawyer and prosecutor or judge anywhere else in the world, I was like, that's all it takes? But you know what happened? 20 of our kids can't do it because of language of instruction. Not that they can't do it. When I say that's all it takes, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that it sounds like so mystical and mystical.
And barrier,
No, they're just regular people like all of us.
And it's the most integrated with the kingdom.
Well,
of all the...
That's where you control. That's where the control is. People say, yeah, but we not slave. But it ain't got nothing to do with that. Who controls what? Who controls your justice? Who controls your education? And who controls your financing? That's where control is. And if you're not putting yourself in the position where you can run it, you're going to be forever serving this. You said serving. You're going to be forever serving as opposed to, determining. Because you might want to go left, but the system says, no, you got to go here. The last in touch. Well, you got parliament functioning every day in English. And then come tell me about the laws in touch.
And even in terms of that public engagement, if we talk about democracy, they have... Your people have a right to review any changes,
right? But here's the thing:
if no effort at least is being made, here is a English. Perfect example would be the budget, for example.
All in Dutch. But here's the stupidity of it. Here's when I say the stupidity, I mean the absurdity, right? You presenting it in English, you're speaking English to communicate it. You have it written in Dutch for two things. Laziness, we call it academic laziness, because you don't want to do it in English, but you're going to tell me what the law's got to be in Dutch. No, there's no reason for it. We talk about that already. So write it so that your people can understand it. But maybe too, you don't want the people to understand. That's another thing. Yeah. Because only so many people can engage now. It's again elitism. Right? Only so many people will be able to scrutinize, will be able to engage, and we'll be able to... Now you have all these experts out here in the private sector that could probably lend some expertise and advice, but they cannot participate or engage because you're using the foreign language to do it. That's number one. But then when you get to the heart of the thing, to be a police officer, we talk about that. To be a judge. I mean, come on.
Coast Guard, et cetera,
and I'm saying, if you really believe that, why don't you operate in Parliament in Dutch then? And see who you're going to talk to when you do that. Or like we talk about a sale. Why when you're having sales, you don't put the ads in Dutch then? See who will engage. See who will participate.
Yeah. But a job ad is in...
The job ad coming in Dutch. Yeah. But the sale, to get your money, to get whatever. We talk about it. This is where the power is. And it's not... And if we don't understand that, we're going to never change. For the next 50 years, we're going to be right here having that conversation.
We make excuses to protect that hegemony.
Yeah, it is. And this is what I'm saying. I don't care about the rest of the world when I say this. If St. Martin's now want to be at that place where we are really empowering our next generation through education, we're going to be changing all of these things to give every St. Martin child the opportunity to be any of those and more.
I think what highlights what you're saying, and then from now we'll go to the question.
Yeah.
What highlights that is this word we've been hearing. I think it's definitely been repeated more often than in the past, but it has been used in the past, which is we have capacity issues. And then that term comes about, particularly as it relates to having certain minds or backgrounds be able to do certain things on the island. And sometimes it baffles me because how can we have capacity issues if we have people who, perform certain roles either next door, around us in the region, or our own people who are living abroad to do these things. And because later on, I'd like to definitely touch on the coho with you, because now that is being pitched as the solution to, again, those capacity issues in man face. But the translation, it doesn't come across quite kosher in that sense, because we have the minds. And it's in the minds. Because listen, first of all, I know you can't use certain words, but to me, you see the H in coho, you turn that into an N with a tilde on the top, figure it out, right? Pretty much, that's what it is. Because here's the capacity narrative. For going into the so-called 10-10-10 conversation, that was a capacity story too. They write a whole... Listen,
anytime a major change is coming or they want to invade, when I say they, I mean who's the they? The they is the powers that be. They write a report. There's always a report to justify what's going to happen. And so there's a report that comes out and say, oh, we have capacity issue. You're going 10, 10, 10. You know, your structure need to look like this. So now, like I said, you need to have a doctorate degree to file papers in certain offices in government because we ain't got no capacity. So you have a super top heavy administration. And the people who have like years of experience, rather than promote them up to capacity, because that would be another route to take as well, you know, train, and move up.
And then you create space.
And then you create space, right?
Yeah.
And you're showing people that you value them also.
And that you're investing in
that
them.
And that their work experience have some worth. There are systems of education that says experience for credit. You bring your experience from the field, you get academic credit for it because it has value, right? We don't do that. What we say is that we lack capacity. You leave the front desk clerk there for 50 years, you know, and then you bring in the next person on top with just come in with a bachelor's and then a master's. And what they're doing, nothing really other than pushing paper. If you really want to expand your people, your core that you have, what we need, you say we need another thing, okay. You go away for 3 years. Mamselle who come in, you know, the counterpart conversation that people don't feel comfortable with. But not even that. I don't need you for 3 years to do no counterparting. You come in, what you say? Give a workshop for 6 months. Train 50 people. 50 people. While this one is here, this is getting. While this one is here, that's one getting. I'm at the University of the Bahamas, and like I said, when I went in, there were 17 of us that came in my cohort from abroad. So we had the whole workshop and everything. But among us that came in from abroad were 4 or 5 Bahamian who had just gotten their doctorate degrees. Because what they did, because they're getting ready now for their accreditation and all of that, right? They sent their people out. I had a math teacher who was studying in Japan. I had another one who was studying somewhere in the U.S. You had Bahamians were saying, we getting ready to do this thing, and we sending them, but we bring in and we transitioning. When my contract is over, and they said they've replaced me with a Bahamian, I totally would understand that, right? Because it's about your people. Yeah. And they're serious about what they're doing.
It's like Barbados, that sign at the airport, need not apply. We have qualified agents.
Okay, I love it.
That's quite a statement to
that is
quite, at the entry. You know,
Barbados is one of the highest educated in the region, Cuba and Barbados. Yeah. But if you look at what's happening in Barbados with level of literacy and level of education, they're serious about their business.
Yes.
You know, Bahamas has something called Bahamianization when they got into their moving into after independence and how they're going to do it, etc. Nobody's doing it perfect, eh? We are making our mistakes, but we're learning. But we're also about expanding our people. In St. Martin, that is not the conversation. First of all, because you're not independent, it is connected to nationality. Whose nationality? Who gets the upper hand in this conversation about expansion and capacity? And if you tie capacity to nationality, well, guess what's going to happen to your people?
In a fate.
Yeah. And the capacity, again, is a story you make to justify what you're going to do.
Yeah, okay. It sets a hard barrier.
Yeah, but it sets a barrier. It also says who need apply and who need not apply.
Indeed.
You know, that's not how you fill capacity. You fill capacity by using what you have and growing what you have to the point that now we're ready to transition into another position. That's how you fill capacity.
Yeah. So starting off then.
So that curriculum story.
Yeah. I got you.
No, because I would say I don't like the system of education. That's why I'm doing the book, right? I want to see a more democratic, inclusive type of education system. That's what I'm proposing. And the more and more I talk about, I had a conversation with a teacher in the North, a European teacher. We're having a conversation about St. Martin kids, and I was like, the kids, it's hard. And my St. Martin kids can't even speak or use English, which is their language, in the system, the school system. And he was like, yeah, it's connected to family. I said, what? I said, what stupidness is that? I said, where did you hear that? And then he tells me, yeah, if you go to the Mary, these are the last names. I said, so you telling me we're educating St. Martiners to go work in the Mary? Is that how? And that's basically his understanding of where the role of the St. Martin child is. Yeah. He don't see he's a European educator, does not see the child as running St. Martin at the 21 square miles over there being in charge, because France got to be in charge, and he could get a job in the Mary if he wants.
Yeah, definitely. So
that's how you're educating my children.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You're tuned into the news behind the news with Ralph Cantal on Mix 94.7 FM, and I'm joined with Dr. Rhoda Arrindell. Now, given how we, I guess, began our conversation, one of the things, and a question I've posed to several people before as well, in regards to education, is what are we doing as far as our, projecting for our future? And I ask that in a sense of, right now we have a priority list, of the areas of study. I'm curious about, how is that updated, basically, has it been updated? But more so in particular because, as I said in the beginning, you have where we are training our people for service, but one of the things we also say is that we want a diversified economy, and we want, a more introduction of technology and all of that. But then you're not seeing the economy making room for, those type of studies that would further take them on to another level. So, I'm curious as to whether it is with the schooling first, is it that we have to go heavier into the STEM or STEAM area, or is it that, we need to first develop the cogs, in the economy to then allow for persons who study into those fields, to take their place in it,
So let's answer this one as directly as we can. For me, the destination first is the first thing, because you said, how do we prepare them for the future, right? You gotta know where you're going, because you can have a million lists.
Correct.
If you ain't moving to anywhere and it's just about status quo, then fine, But again, this is where I bring it back to independence. This is really an independence type of question. If I say, for example, Ralph, right? We are going to become, or we've made the decision, because you got to make the decision first. Because if you ain't make the decision to go, you forever in this vortex going and coming, right? But let's say we have made a decision and we're going to become independent in, let's say, 7 years. I like 7. 7 is a nice number. Cohort trying 6 and CFT was 5. I'm going with 7. Let's say we want to do that. So if we're going to become independent in 7 years, then we say, okay, now we have a priority list, because now we can make a real priority list, because we know we need a head of a central bank. We need a central bank and its staffing. Who do we got and who do we need? You make a list. We know that we probably going to change a political structure. Yeah, maybe going to change. Let's say we do what they calling it now, constitutional reform. We don't like the system. Maybe we're going to need a couple of this and a couple of that. We're going to be in charge of our own judiciary. Do we need 1 judge, 5 judges? So now we make a list. Now you have a real priority list that's connected to a destination.
To where you're going.
That's a real future, because you've seen the future where you're going. If you're just making a priority list, and we talk to the merchants and they say we should bring, we want a jewelry cutters, okay, fine. But walk down Front Street and see how that's working out, right? So you make a list going on a destination, and because you're clear what a destination is, now you're mapping the road to the destination, and your priority list matches that. So we're going to send Ralph to Jamaica for another 5 years, because he's going to be head of our communications department. Central bank training going on. Then over here by the tax office, because we're going to transition to this new tax system, we're sending people in 5 different jurisdictions to study all kinds of taxes, and we're giving out scholarships for that. Tell me how many St. Martiners ain't going to be ready to jump at opportunities like that. You know what? I see myself there in 5 years. I can see it. Or we have those brothers and sisters that are out there currently that we can say, yo, you need to come home, St. Martin, looking for certain amount of people. That's how you plan your priority list. To me, other than that, it's almost like doing the lottery. I think I gave you my example when I went away. And this is like, I went away about 40-something years, almost 40 years ago. Oh. Nothing ain't changing the modus operandi. Because it was like a list. My advisor, again, God bless you, Claudette LaBega, now Foresight. She said, don't do that. I thought I was going to be a psychologist or I'm going to do special ed. I want to be with ed. She said, do linguistics. Why? She was smart enough to know my chances of getting the scholarship and what I was good at and liked. She said, I was good at languages. I liked it. But she also said, your chances of getting the scholarship would have been better if you do this. Now, I can now say I'm the only one I know with a doctorate in linguistics on the island. And so I feel proud, first of all, to come back and serve, but I also feel proud to fill a void because there would have been, right now we got a researcher walking around saying some crazy things, like, to be honest with you, about certain things in linguistics. But again, it's good to have your own and it's good to have the external. You got to see how this thing match up. But when you have a void, you have to, the capacity, you have to keep filling it. You ain't got, what's your priority list looking like? So if you're saying we're going to have 6 judges in 6 years, you have to get rid of this system because if what we have now was doing what you wanted to do, it would have done it already. It hasn't done it in 50 years. You don't have judges because your system is set up to give you judges. So if you really want to go and you want your own judges, you're going to have to change the system. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think what that touches on next is ways in which, what ways can we improve, the preparatory schools such as PSV and vocational?
I wouldn't use itself. I would dump it. To transition, we could work out the roadmap, how to I personally believe that every St. Martin child, I would do away with the whole FBE exam and all that nonsense. I would say, once you get into this thing called secondary school, wherever it is, you as a child should be able to have your buffet of whatever it is you want to study. Of course, you pick your passion and also career, because what it's starting to look like, mark my word on this, in the next 10 years, you're going to see something like this. It's starting to look like the world out there, the university level type of education. People are going to be designing their own majors.
But that's what it is already.
Okay then. See what I'm saying? So what you got my child stuck about FP, what the thing is, PSVE and all that nonsense. If out there you're going to be designing your own major, creating your own major to be what, because remember the world is changing. People are more versatile. Job situations are more versatile, right? It's not even more because it used to be like 100 years ago and it's coming back. But now,
and then how you're going to have jobs that don't even exist.
That don't exist right now. And so you got to be right. Man, you on, right? You got to be the kind of education that you got to cater to. There are certain core things that every education system going to have regardless.
So I have a question based on that. So is it that, obviously government has its role there, but in a sense, can you, I don't want to say dictate, but how much influence would you have then on the foundations, the school boards?
I would do away with school boards too. I swear to God, I will do away with school boards.
What's your reason for stating so?
First of all, they're outdated and redundant. I would have, because remember I'm talking about 37 square miles of rock, You got 2 systems, let's say 2 administration, because I like to see like two cities in the same state, right? Yeah, Marigot and Great Bay in the same state, right? And each city got its own, in the US you got counties and stuff, you got your own state. And I would say do away with all of that, right? And what do you get? You get a more, to a certain extent, centralized type of education. Let's say the 16 square mile has one and the 21 has one. But then from there, you have like a common curriculum, right? That every school got, every school. I ain't trying to differentiate parochial versus non-parochial. Every school gonna have the same core curriculum. So the basic skills that every child needs, not the reading, writing, arithmetic only, but analytical thinking and creativity skills, etc. You are going to build that into, and most of it is there, it's just organized differently now. When you get to the higher levels like secondary education, every child should be able to pick what he wants to. These are the options for fields that you can go into, but your preparation should permit you to be flexible to go into any of them.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the best kind of education. What you do now is you put, to me, from my proposal, you put a lot of you're hiring teachers to be what? To be experts. That's their job. They're experts in education and educating. So you're going to have to rely a lot more on your teachers to have an input as to this child is pushing in this, but you're going to set the framework. And when you set the framework, from, let's say, the central, let's say the Directorate of Education. I don't want to use any words that currently exist, but let's say we call it the Directorate of Education, and the Directorate of Education now says this is the core teacher in school, St. Peter's. You might go about executing differently than school Dutch Quarter, because you have a different body of students. You have a different reality on the ground. You're meeting the core. You're making sure that they know about this in St. Martin history and language and culture. You make sure that they have a minimum level of financial literacy. You make sure they have a minimum level of technological skills. Every child, every child. If the child says, look, I have no interest in technology, don't harass me. You say, okay, you fulfill the minimum, whether you're first year or your second year, you can move on. Move on. Do whatever it is you want. If you do that, you get better human beings, number one.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You get fuller human beings in terms of their participation now.
Yes.
Because you've now trained them also in things like civic duty, and because those are core,
yes.
right? Civic responsibility, etc. Every child, you ain't got to be running around behind him to go pay taxes. He can almost do it automatically because he understands how he fits in the puzzle. There are a lot of things that you can do better in the society by changing your education system. I'm saying get rid of, because what is has not served us. If it was supposed to do it, they would have done it already.
And you've had, for me, if you got a good 20 years already.
We got more than 20 years.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
We got 50.
If you got more than 20 years, that should tell you.
We start FBE, we change it, we gone back, we somewhere in between, now we going to go, and then we're going to talk about this cohort thing, because it only getting crazier with what I see coming with cohort.
So I like what you said, reason being, because I remember talking to a couple people and saying, I feel like our generation is the last to get that college experience, to that actually, in a sense, kind of needed it. Because from now on, and this is a thing too you see with the world as well, whenever a shift is coming, systems, bodies, let's say bodies that protect certain systems, they eventually capitulate.
Yes.
Because they can't go against the grain. They try as much as to maintain it. So the education system of the world, you have a situation where if companies, let's say some that make a parent proud, my son is working for Google or for Facebook or Meta or whatever. Yeah. These companies are actually offering even high school dropouts.
Yeah.
Training. You could do a certification and be hired by the company. Meaning to say you don't have to do that 4, 6, 8 years of college. So what the universities themselves are doing, they were like, okay, well, we can't continue the old style way. They're offering certification programs. Yep. So that mending of your study is happening. And it will happen to the point where really, again,
it is changing.
That old way of learning is not,
and again,
it's not necessary.
When we plan it, we got to see the 20, 30 years ahead. And since because of this whole, the rapid speed of the change of technology, a lot of it is still unknown. And I think COVID gave us a good opportunity to see how a lot of it is still unknown.
Yeah.
So you also need a flexibility, right?
Yeah.
You need a student who's able to switch from here to there. He need critical thinking skills regardless of what he's going to study.
Yes.
Right? He need to be able to analyze documentation. You got to read a little bit. We also need to be able to write, not necessarily write with paper and pen, but you need to be able to string things together to communicate orally and in writing, right? So those are basic skills that every child going to need. That's what you build on. But that's also in tune with the human spirit. You're helping the child, you should be, to connect more inward. That education that feeds the inside, when you feed the inside, you get more on the outside.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I had here is Performance Arts Center. We have... this goes back to maybe your time,
2010, and before that.
Yes, because since being in primary school, this has been a talk. Yeah. I remember seeing Trinidad's Center. Oh my God, phenomenal! The Performance Arts Center.
I know.
And I'm curious about what steps do we take to finally, make such an investment, that our youths can see, really see something being done on their behalf. Not just that you have a shell, of just a space where you could put on a few shows, but also a training ground. Okay,
don't get me wrong, Rav, don't get me wrong. I think a center is important. And the one that I had proposed was a performing arts and conference center, because I think it should have multiple purpose, right? But I think that's a secondary. I swear to God, secondary.
How so?
Go to Cuba and see their performance arts center. I seen the one in Trinidad and I see the one in Cuba. Okay? So the center is important, don't get me wrong. But to me, the programming is more important.
Well, yes.
You don't need a center to do a lot of things that you could be doing now. And we're not doing them and we're blaming it on not having a center. I disagree. It's the same thing with sports.
Well, no, because we have NIA and...
We have them, and you see how Clara gets
Yes,
created with
correct.
a little black box and
Correct.
thing. Not that we don't need a performing arts center, we do. But to me, the more important than anything else is that performing arts curriculum
Okay,
that
I
every
got you.
child gets access to, right? In every school, because your doctor may like film, or your child who's going to be a doctor may like film. Why can't he do the two while he's studying, right? Why he can be a singer while he's studying to be a dentist, all of that. To me, that's where that is more important. Why the education system got to change first. And then the center is important. The sports facilities are important. But you can't have a Raul LH, for example, lock up every day, all day and say, we're going to paint.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
or
got you.
whatever it is. Where's the programming? You could do that on a Taman tree. You could, when they had no centers and facilities where we used to practice.
In the park.
Yeah. I remember running a Raul LH. Even he had, you run rock stones, no shoes. We ain't got no shoes, but we had sports. So that's secondary.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, let's focus on programming, what kind of humans we want to build, and what kind of performers we want from our people.
I guess there wouldn't be no...
we need no facility to do that.
No minors left out in that sense. 'Cause
right.
With some students, if you kind of touch on idle minds, idle hands, in some cases, their parents can't afford to put them in a program that would help them engage, in the energy that they have,
You change our school system where you make certain things mandatory in terms of access to it. And not you must study flute, but access to flute, every child have it.
Yes.
Accessible, right? Equitable, right? You change a system where every child, you're going to see a whole lot more productivity from young people. I guarantee you. And I'm saying, you know what happened? If I don't trust me, give me a pilot project to run, pay for it, because that's where the problem is, and I'm going to show you.
Okay. In interest of time.
Yeah, give me the money.
In interest of time, I have to touch on this last subject, which also deals with financing, because as far as the University of St. Martin, it has faced many challenges.
They sell out the university. I could say it like that.
Well, I'll let you elaborate. It has faced many challenges, and how I look at university is like, it should be, or education is like, it should be the brain of your country, producing ideas and so forth. But whether it's funding or financial management, there is a backlog in the growth of it, throughout the many years. So do you see it as an issue solely because of government funding, government recognition, or do we perhaps adopt a UE or a UVI, opposed to creating a national university? What is your take on that?
This one big. First of all, you got to understand what you mean by national university, because I hear the word. I think people's definition of the nation is misplaced when you think of a national university. My eyes, a national university is that one for 37 square miles, right? That for me is the national university to produce the manpower. And I'm comparing it to UB because I'm at UB and I'm seeing what's happening at UB, right? And how
University of Bahamas.
University of Bahamas, yeah. And I've seen how that process and how I got involved, right? Because they have, again, the vision, where we're going. To me, USM, and I'll say this without any shade as I either say nowadays, university problem is university board. That's where the problem is. Not the people necessarily. The structure the University of St. Martin is set up in is a wrong structure for St. Martin, for a university, period. That whole foundation structure that we have in our system does not permit a real university to operate. That's number one. If we not address that, we ain't fixing nothing. You could change directors, change names. Nothing ain't going to change, because number one, the people who are on the board are not educators. And they don't have a vision for education and national development. You have one of this. The system say get a legal person, you get one of those. You get a finance person, conflicts of interest, all kind of things. Yeah. You get all of that, but you ain't got no real education taking place at that level. So what they do, they rely on who they bring in. Look at the history of USM over the past years and tell me how many of the leadership were educators. You pick anybody. The way people say you find any stick to beat a dog, you pick anybody. You find a little manager dog, you bring him, you got PhD, you can be USM president. And then you change the name USM director. We need to show the directors are president. Mind you, we don't understand what university president is yet. We just pick a name. That's where the problem of USM is. USM needs, first of all, a national university. It's in the book. A national university got to serve 37 square miles of the nation. Mm-hmm. Take care of our people to develop the capacity to run the 37 square miles, right? That's the capacity we're talking about. So when you say that and you're saying, what are we going to put in this institution that's going to become the brain, as you use just now, the development center of the country, of the nation? That's where you start. And from there, you're saying, well, knowing that we are a Caribbean island with tourism as the core and that we have the potential to become anything, anywhere, and our children are going to be global citizens, all of that's part of your mission statement, etc. You create the programs now that you need that will get you there. And then you decide who you're going to collaborate with. Right? Because your collaboration, again, has to be based on your interests.
And your vision.
On your vision of your national development. But you also want to attract foreign students, right? Maybe that's part of the vision. You want to attract foreign students. So, since you could nowadays, you call this the nomad, the business, but the nomad student, you could study in St. Martin. That's my book is called actually A World-Class Education from St. Martin, right? But you imagine.
Come out this year?
I hope. I'm trying. Lord, I'm trying. Okay. Right? I'm trying because I have text. But I got to make sure all the facts line up with,
Gotcha.
You understand?
Gotcha.
You say get it right rather than me first. But if you got that going on, you can attract students from anywhere in the world to come study here, whether it's elementary, secondary, or tertiary level. They don't have to. And then you partner with whomever that's going to give you the better partnership. I don't particularly think there needs to be a UE, a USV, or what they're doing now with trying to put it under the ministry in the Netherlands, which is where the sellout is. You don't have to do that. You create your thing and say, listen, Harvard, so you got a program on Caribbean, whatever. You want to partner with us at USM. And then the Harvard name is attached to you.
Gotcha.
Right.
I follow you.
You need a structure that's going to permit you to get there. You don't have that at USM. So you got whatever happening and whoever got money, that's how we're going. They do, listen, they're selling the soul at USM for money. For real. They're selling the soul at the St. Martin people for money. Opinion.
Enough said. Enough said.
Ralph wouldn't say it, but I could say it. Yeah.
So some of the questions I did ask, those I managed to ask, actually came from the intern that we have here with us in the room.
Oh, nice.
So I'll end off with one of her questions, and it's very interesting, which is, if you were given unlimited funding for education, what changes would you make? And you got...
I changed the whole system. Unlimited, you said, right?
Yeah, you got...
Change the whole system.
3 minutes.
Change the whole system. I'm going to start. That's why I'm proposing. That's why I'm doing the book, because I've been in this field for over 30-something years. I've been a product of the system. I've been begging for certain changes. I don't think anybody paying attention. And it's not just me. People before me have been begging for some of these changes. We get the MAC and we were happy. Then we get the St. Martin Academy. We were happy. Then we get the MAC High, based on certain principles and certain changes that certain people want. I'm saying that's not enough. I'm saying we got to change the system. Make it holistic.
I got you.
Change the system. Yeah. And the investment, the money that you would invest now will be worth it in every other area on this island. Every other area. I guarantee you. And a lot of the forces know that too. So there's a reason why to not let it happen. That's the reality.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Imagine a bunch of island people smelling itself. Where you going?
Yeah, because...
But we got to do it.
Yeah. It's for our benefit, simply put.
It's for our people.
Yes.
So give me the money. Let me hire a team, because we do this as a team. I can guarantee, give us 10 years. We can guarantee you. Is that a challenge? Do you have somebody who's watching that? I can say, yeah, if you have the money, give us the money. Yeah, in 10 years, and we're going to fix it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yes,
and we have the capacity to.
We been have the capacity. You can't get 400 years of slavery that build an empire everywhere else in the world, and they ain't got the capacity here. Come on.
There you go.
There you go.
So with that, thank you so much, Rhoda. Part 3 soon.
Yeah, whenever you.
And to our viewers and listeners, I hope that you guys definitely also enjoy this conversation, but that it challenge you to think about different things, specifically where education is concerned. So with that, be sure to tune in again tomorrow and take care.
Yes.